I'm really happy to be here and to present this paper. I really enjoy the time I'm presenting the papers. So yeah. So for today, I will start with reading a poem that I think it connects with the theme of what is reality, what is truth, connected to the natural world, to nature. So the poem is by Hafiz, that you might know. And this book and this poem, it was Andy who introduced to me this poem when we were in Issler. He read this poem, and I think it complements my paper today. So I'm going to read the poem. It's quite a story, I think. It's called, that's the title, That Knowledge You Will Not Be Able to Accept. The parent of 3 young birds got shot by a hunter. After a few days of no food, the 2 largest birds killed their brother. They ate him and picked at his bones for a week. Then that hunger we have all known set in again, which would cause many to do most anything if that ache did last, and it did. And thus other wings never climbed into the air. A few more nights passed, and then it was at sunrise the lone bird fell from its nest. Though it survived on the ground, eating some ants, and then one day it did fly. Its song came to please many ears. Its beauty enhanced the eye of those who saw it. Even a loving parent it became. The guards of the gate of heaven are such good friends of mine. You should know there is nothing you have ever done that is not innocent and will in any way be judged as wrong by anyone of true wisdom. But such knowledge you will not be able to accept until you and an angel's way are more similar. It just goes like that. So that's the poem. And I will start now reading my paper. The world is a sea of forces. Forces that are constantly moving, constantly changing. There is no stability. As Virginia Woolf says in a literary way, in one of her books, I quote, "There is no stability in this world. Who is to say what meaning there is in anything? Who is to foretell the flight of a word? It is a balloon that sails over the treetops. To speak of knowledge is futile. All is experience and adventure. We are forever mixing ourselves with unknown quantities. What is to come? I know not." End of quote. The natural, actual world is the world of the phenomena. We could call it the real world in terms of Lacan. The world that does not cease to transform itself. As Lavoisier would say, nothing is created, nothing is destroyed, everything is transformed. The natural world is in eternal metamorphosis. Its shapes are never the same. The natural world is the world where the impulses, the forces, are in a never-ending encounter. There is a multitude of impulses, drives, and forces that are in a combat with themselves, each one trying to overpower the others. Even a stone that is sitting still is subjected to the force of gravity, acting on it against the ground, and the forces of the wind around it. And inside the stone, there are atoms and electrons that display some energy, although it is a very low energy. Everything is in action. Everything is different at different moments of time. In nature, nothing can be stopped. So, if you want to stop the world, you need to create a parallel world where there is no action. And to create such an artificial world, we need an artifice. Language can stop the world. Language can detach itself from the motion. Language stops the motion by using signs, symbols, designation, words, concepts, as it envelops the world with a veil of form and stability. This veil hides the movement with a static formal appearance. The shape of something becomes fixed. A tree is a tree and not a tree in movement, which would require infinite names for each one of the different movements and at different moments. This is why Heraclitus, the philosopher, says that we never step into the same river twice. Because each instant there is a new river. We can step at the same name of the river. We step at the Thames many times. Language uses words as an abstraction to what is. The word river is an abstraction that attributes a name to a multitude of forces that are interacting in the actual real world. In the same way, we could understand the eye. There are a multitude of forces inside of us interconnected, but we use an eternal flux, but we use one word, I. The intellect, which is the organ of language, has considered that designating things is knowledge, and has considered itself the master of this world of designations. Nietzsche says on Human All Too Human that, I quote, the maker of language was not modest enough to think that he only gave designation to things. He believed rather that with his words, he expressed the widest knowledge of the things. In reality, language is the first step in the endeavor after science. End of quote. Language has gone beyond the world of what is to a world of knowledge. Knowledge is a construction and belongs to consciousness, and not in the unconscious. What we understand is that knowledge is something that we are conscious of. But there could be a kind of knowledge that I'm not conscious of. Something that I know, but I'm not conscious of knowing it. Things that are unconsciously known. That is a knowledge that is unconscious. This knowledge would be, as I understand it, closer to the eternal movement of the natural real world. And there could be even a language related to that knowledge. We might call it an intuitive language, a language closer perhaps to movements, sounds, and gestures. And its wisdom would be related to that. The information that we communicate unconsciously would be considered knowledge, but it could not be communicated to another human being with words, because it would be not a conscious language. Or in other words, we could not be conscious of that knowledge, and therefore we could not communicate it with words, concepts, symbols, systems. We humans, as much as other animals, we use unconscious language to transmit knowledge, but we do not know how to communicate consciously because of the simple fact that we are not conscious of it. There is not a mirror that reflects what we know. Reflecting in our minds what is going on inside our unconscious is already a conscious labor. And that implies conscious language. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche states that, I quote, "Man, like every living creature, thinks unceasingly, but does not know it. The thinking which is becoming conscious of itself is only the smallest part. We may say the most superficial part, the worst part. For this conscious thinking alone is done with words, that is to say, in symbols for communication, by means of which the origin of consciousness is revealed." End of quote. A little further on in the same paragraph adds Nietzsche that, I quote, "Fundamentally, our actions are in an incomparable manner altogether personal, unique, and absolutely individual. There is no doubt about it. But as soon as we translate them into consciousness, they do not appear so any longer." Sorry. "The world of which we can become conscious is only a superficial and symbolic world, a generalized and vulgarized. That everything that becomes conscious becomes just thereby shallow, meager, relatively stupid. A generalization, a symbol, a characteristic of the herd." End of quote. Language is related to communication and the need for communication. Consciousness and communication are linked. Consciousness was created because humans needed to communicate with each other. Nietzsche says in On Truth and Lie, in an extramoral sense, that human beings, because of boredom and necessity, wanted to live socially and live in peace. So a peace pact was established using conscious language, because it is the only way by which truth and lie can be known. Susan Sontag, in one of her books, says, I quote, "Perhaps it would be easier for people to care for the truth if they understood that truth only exists when they tell it. Let me explain. The truth is always something that is told, not something that is known. If there were no speaking or writing, there would be no truth about anything. There would only be what is. Thus, to me, my life and my preoccupations are not the truth. They are simply my life, my preoccupations." Only with the use of words and language there can be truth. When humans use language, they can become trustworthy. Nietzsche says in that same text, referring to the creation of language and consequently truth, I quote, "For now that is fixed what shall be truth. That is a regularly valid and obligatory designation of things is invented. And this linguistic legislation also furnishes the first laws of truth. For it is here that the contrast between truth and lie first originates. End of quote. A river running, the sun shining. A waterfall, a wet stone, the rain. A leaf on the ground, two rocks that collide and produce a sound. To all that we cannot attribute a value, a judgment of truth or false. We cannot say this river, this rain is false or wrong, or this stone is a lie. There is no way to attribute truth or lie to any of those things. Just like in a dream, I can't attribute to a dream a value of truth or lie, right or wrong. Someone tells me a dream where they are flying above the tree tops. Or another dream that someone tells me, for example, they say, I was riding a bull. This bull was going down a mountain. Suddenly I look at that bull and it had turned into a bride. And I arrive in my parents' room. There was a party there, full of people. I said to them that I was guilty because I had killed someone, but no one would listen to me. No one seemed to care about me being a murderer. People only wanted to party, dance, and drink. To any of those dreams, or any dream, it cannot be said they are false or wrong. There could only be truth and lie, right and wrong in relation to conscious language. In the natural world, there is no right and wrong. In the natural world, the ones who are likely to speak the truth are the impulses, the various forces inside and outside of us. Like, for example, the force of gravity that applies weight to my body. And inside of my body, there are forces like my bowels digesting foods, my heart beating, the nerves, the nose sensing smells, the palate who can taste various assorted flavors, the eyes that may grab with them an image, the hands that can see something with their touch, or my back that lie down on the floor, on the grass or sand. Those impulses, they tell the truth. They speak. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche requests from the philosopher to rise above the belief in grammar, demanding from them to go beyond grammar and the idea of subject and predicate. He also encourages us to think, I quote, that nothing else is given as real rather than our world of appetites and passions, that we cannot descend or ascend to any other reality, but precisely to the reality of our impulses. End of quote. It seems that all we have real are our appetites and passions, and the relationship between these impulses. We could even consider the I a group of impulses. Reason could also be considered a group of impulses that must confront other impulses. Georges Bataille says that, I quote, in the disorder of thoughts emerges, for example, poetry. There's something deeply poetic about any kind of thought disorder, or better yet, disorderly attitudes. End of quote. What he seems to express is that poetry welcomes plurality, multiplicity, and poetry in that sense is perhaps closer to the natural world, where an enormous variety of impulses are involved. So when words are needed, they would appear not in an orderly way, but in a disorderly manner, a chaos in the sense of an appreciation of multiplicity, diversity, and variety. Nietzsche understands that he has the capacity to recognize this multiplicity in himself. In Esse Homo, his autobiography, He says that he eliminates nothing. He has the capacity to include as many things as possible. If Nietzsche eliminates nothing, he could not eliminate the movement of various forces, and he could not be fixed into the formality of conceptual language, since it excludes inconstancy. That's why Nietzsche, to communicate, goes beyond formal language and arrives in a style closer to metaphors, images, and in aphorisms, because they include as many impulses as possible, even contradicting ones. If I say, for example, honey, I'm leaving now for my dancing class, and I'm taking my bike instead of your car because it's such a nice evening and I want to enjoy its warm air. And tonight, you may well remember, it is rehearsal night, so I will be back late, probably around 10:30. So you don't have to wait for me for dinner. When I arrive, I grab something from the fridge. That sentence is full of information, using many words, and yet it is not difficult to express the information with language, because it does not involve many deep emotions. Poems, on the contrary, involve many deep emotions, and many times contradicting ones. When we think, for example, about the important moments and events in our lives, those are the most difficult ones to express with formal language. How to express with words the experience of leaving your parents' home to live by yourself? Or how to describe the scent of your grandparents' house when you were a kid, exploring its rooms and their secret passages? It is difficult to express with words what is going on those moments, because we first need to be in contact with a multitude of internal emotions, passions, impulses, and in many cases, contradicting ones, to be able to translate them to our mind and then express them with words. It is not easy to express them with words, but it is crucial to do so, because with discharge, we release the immense amount of energy consumed by those events. Usually, they are consumed by symptoms. Expressing words using language is a tool that we own to release the energy that is attached to painful events in our lives. That is what Freud would call abreaction or catharsis. To release traumatic events from our memories, we need to use words simultaneously with deep emotions in front of the analyst. After an abreaction, we may be able to really forget the traumatic event, and it won't return unconsciously in the form of a symptom. That either that symptom doesn't make any sense anymore in our lives, or a symptom that is making us suffer. We are born in a culture that uses words and language. It is because we use words and symbols that we can understand each other and eventually get rid of painful memories, that without language they could not be easily understood and really forgotten. There are truths and there are lies. When I say, for example, that I was born in Brazil, that is the truth. If I say I was born in India, that is a lie. If I say that I can fly a plane, that is a lie. If I say that I don't like lemon ice cream, and that every time I'm having one, I feel like I should be having a chocolate one instead, that is true. If I say that I'm feeling a freezing cold sun burning inside my belly, that is true. But here I need to use metaphors because I couldn't easily find words to express what I was experiencing. There is where truth and art tend to be closer. Reality is a construction, and it uses language to be built. If there is no language, there is no reality. Reality is almost the opposite of the natural world, or the real, as Lacan calls it. The real is a world without imagination and symbols. And as we saw it, it is revealed when we remove the veil of appearances. Reality and appearances go together. The moment we remove the veil of appearances, panic attack may be experienced, as the world is seen in its inhumanity, in its animality. I would not see a form, a shape of a tree, but the vascular tissue of the leaf, the wood, the branches, cells, and various distinct parts separated. Although appearances, forms, language, words, moral, laws, concepts, mathematics, logic are abstractions to what is and detached from the real natural world, they are shelter for the spirit because they alleviate the horror of the uncertainty of the natural world. And we need shelter to live. The concern here is how much shelter we need. No shelter is too scary. Too much shelter may confine us in concepts like God, the truth, paradise, the other world, that will leave not much room to explore and enjoy this world and this earthly life. Myths are stories that depict a world closer to the natural world, where emotions, contradicting impulses, transformations, mutations, constant metamorphoses are always present, and nothing appears as it is. This is the role of art, to get us closer to the natural world that we lost contact in our daily conscious lives. But it is undoubtedly constant inside of us all the time. It appears in dreams, in passions, in breathing, smelling, tasting food, looking at trees and the sky. This world was lived in its full maximum intensity in our early years of life. At that time, when we were only babies, we had nothing but our impulses to guide us. This world hasn't left us. It lives inside of us. Arts, poems, myths, stories, imagination, fantasy have not only the task, but also the duty to rescue this world back to us. So reality does not perish in concepts, abstractions, and in a game of truth and lies that only drive us away from our primordial joy, which is to feel alive and share that joy. Nietzsche says in Birth of Tragedy that, I quote, only art has the power to transform those disgusted thoughts about the horror and absurdity of existence into representations to which it is possible to live. End of quote. That's it.